So good afternoon, everyone. Sorry about the delay. We were having a few technical difficulties on my end, apparently. So welcome to today's Rural Broadband in Oklahoma webinar. This is part of our ongoing Learn at Lunch series. And today, Dr. Brian Whitacre, who is a professor in the OSU Department of Agricultural Economics, will present a slightly condensed version of his presentation from the recent Rural Economic Outlook Conference. If you have any questions, please ask them through the chat window, and Dr. Whitacre will answer your questions at the end of the presentation today. Click the chat button at the bottom of the screen to open the chat window. And additional farm management resources may be found on the eFarm Management page, and I will share a link to this page in the chat window. Dr. Whitacre, I will turn it over to you now.
All righty, thank you, Brent. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. As Brent indicated, this is a presentation that I've given a couple times now. It's a topic that's of a lot of interest across the state and nation, and so I'm really going to talk about what's going on in broadband. It's particularly here in Oklahoma. Again, appreciate Brent having me on to talk about this for the Learn at Lunch seminar series. I did give this presentation at the Economic Outlook Conference last week, and so he asked me to kind of shrink it down a little bit and give you guys an overview. So here's what I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to kind of define broadband, what it is, and we'll talk about what technologies are used to provide broadband. There is some really good recent research on what broadband means for economic impacts, particularly in rural areas, which is what I think a lot of people might be interested in. I always make the distinction between broadband availability and broadband adoption when I talk about this, and so I'll lay those out for you all. And then what's going to be the path moving forward. I'm actually on the Oklahoma Rural Broadband Expansion Council, and there's a lot of money right now for rural broadband, and I'll talk about that, and hopefully some of you all out there in the county might be able to get your county officials interested in this, because this is a hot topic, and there is a lot of money coming down the pipeline here. So what is broadband? I always, any of you guys out there remember this picture of a dial-up modem, the old 56K modem? I play that for my students nowadays, and they don't know what it is, but I think maybe some of us have remember the lovely sound that it made and the problems you had getting kicked off and things like that. So basically, broadband is just fast internet access that doesn't need this dial-up modem we used to have back in the late 1990s. You can see that the speed threshold for how quick your connection has to be considered broadband, it has changed over the years. And right now, we're still using a 2015 definition of 25 megabits per second download and 3 megabits per second upload, which if you look down there at the bullet points, a Netflix connection requires about 5 megabits per second. A Zoom call requires about 1. So you can quickly see how a household doing some teleworking and conferences with children or for schoolwork or whatever the case may be may quickly eat up that 25 megabits per second. And so some people are saying that's outdated. We need to go to a faster definition. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. I do want to kind of clarify that there is a distinction between a fixed connection, which is what most of us sitting on a laptop or desktop computer are using, versus a mobile connection, which is what most of us have on our cell phones. So you can drive down the road using your cell phone and using the internet access on your cell phone, and that's a mobile connection. It works off a cellular network. It moves with you essentially, and that's different than a fixed connection, which is it's at one particular point in your office or your house or whatever the case is. Interestingly, satellite is considered fixed because it is sent just to a single point. It doesn't move like your cell phone does. And the FCC basically says these things are complements. They're not substitutes for each other. So most of us do use a fixed connection and a mobile connection. So I just kind of wanted to highlight that. So one thing that's interesting is people are certainly taking advantage of the fact that we're doing more and more online. And so if you look at the dark blue category here, these are speeds of over 100 megabits per second. You can see how that's really exploded here over the past 4 or 5 years. This data only goes up through 2018. It's the most recent we have, but really half of all residential connections were over 100 megabits per second in 2018. You can see the slow connections there, the ones less than 3 megabits per second or even less than 10 have really kind of shrunk down there in the bottom of that chart. So more and more people are going to have faster speed, and we're doing a lot more stuff online right now. And so this is a trend we can continue to, we expect to continue to see. I think we all kind of know why broadband is important. Most of us use it for a whole lot of different things every day. It's the first place I go pretty much when I wake up, and spend a good bit of time on the internet all day. COVID-19 has made this really pretty clear. 5 years ago, my colleagues and I that work in this area were trying to make the case for how important broadband was to people, and COVID-19 really made that case for us. So if you didn't have a connection during COVID-19, it was really hard to do things like work from home or get a medical appointment, or get your kids connected to do their schoolwork online. So it really became obvious during COVID-19 why broadband access is so important. So there's really been a policy push for doing something about it. And so that's what we're going to kind of focus on in the last part of this presentation. So I do want to point out there's a lot of other people like me that do research in this area. And so we do have a good body of research evidence now showing that, yes, broadband does matter for a whole host of rural quality of life metrics. And so I listed a few of them here, things like income growth, civic engagement, reducing unemployment, getting firms to locate in your area. We just published one on entrepreneurship. I'll talk a little bit more about. It raises your housing values when you've got access to good broadband connection. And there's even some recent research showing it raises farm productivity. So I'm just going to quickly scroll through some of these studies. I'm happy to provide these to any of you all that are interested in them, but they're again, pretty academic. This one particularly talks about business startup rates in rural areas. There's some here again on rural housing values. Some colleagues looked at female-led entrepreneurship and showed that broadband was important for those types of new firm births. And then I mentioned the farm productivity. So these are all different researchers working in these areas. We have a good research base on this now. And I just quickly want to highlight a couple of ones. This is the one we most recently published, and it shows that for entrepreneurship in rural areas, you probably need 50 megabits per second. That's higher than the current 25 that is enacted right now. Here's one for my colleagues on the female-led entrepreneurship, and they showed again it's particularly rural broadband access is particularly important for them. And then here's one for farm productivity, and they show evidence of crop yield improvements in places with better internet access, and they also show a decrease in operating expenses for farmers that use the internet at faster speeds. So these are all things that are relevant to rural areas and the importance of broadband access. There is a good data set out there right now that shows you where broadband is available, or I shouldn't say good, it's what we have. It's not, people recognize that it's problematic. You can see some of the headlines there that Congress tells the FCC to fix these maps. The issue is, so if you go to this link and actually type in a town or a zip code, or you can choose anything you want, it'll show you on the right-hand side here what your local providers are. And so I typed in Cordell, and you can see that the main provider there is a fixed wireless Omega One, who offers 100 megabits per second down and 15 up. The next two fastest are satellite providers, and then they've got some DSL providers, which are kind of relatively slow providers in the area. The problem with this is that if there's even one provider or one household in a block that's served by the provider, then the entire block is considered served, and that is not true in reality. And so we're working, the national government and the state of Oklahoma is working to get some better maps, and I'll kind of highlight that as I continue to go on here. This is the problem with the maps right now. If you look at the left-hand side, all of those striped areas are shown as having service, but in reality, the ones with the slashes through them do not have service, because again, over here, there's this one block, there's this one household that is in this census block that the provider serves. The rest of them are denoted as having it under the current methodology, but we know that's not a good way to do it. So we're working on moving to this methodology on the right, where the providers will actually have to give us shape files of polygons where they actually serve. So we would have thought we might have started out with a technique like that, but we are not. We're moving to that. We won't have a good map available to us probably until the end of next year is the timeline that we're looking at. So even though we know that the broadband data we do have is bad, we can still kind of use it to paint a picture. Everybody's facing through the same situation. And so here's how Oklahoma kind of stacks up against our neighbors. So if you look just at the rural availability, the rural areas of the state, the national average for broadband availability is about 83%. And we are sitting at about 72%. So we're well behind the national average, a little bit better than Arkansas, but behind most of our neighbors for rural broadband availability. The good news is we're ramping up. We're improving over the past couple of years. You can see a marked improvement since 2017. We're still behind the national average, but we're doing better than we used to. So I kind of want to make the point that availability is not the same as adoption. Availability just says this technology is here and is accessible for a household. And you can see the rates there. This is the ones we just talked about, where we're about 10 percentage points behind the rural averages. But when you look at adoption, that's different. That's the percentage of households that actually pay for a connection. And so here, again, we lag behind. We're about, any type of broadband, we're about 84%, whereas the national average is 86%. But in terms of those really good wired connections, we're well behind. We're only 59%, whereas the national average is about 70%. And we have higher rates of things like mobile only or satellite connections, which again is not optimal. Those don't give you the best type of broadband experience. So I wanted to go through some maps here that we can make for your county. And this is something that we try to do as part of our broadband program. Here's one generally speaking for all of Oklahoma in terms of where broadband is available. We do have a lot of counties with very poor rates of availability. And I wanted to just quickly show you about 3 or 4 maps that we can make, that we have made. And again, we can make these for your county, and they might be useful if you would like to have some funding for broadband that's coming down the pipeline through the American Rescue Plan. So here's Grant County, about 90% availability in this county of 4,400. But even though most of the county has decent connectivity, there are parts you can see there that are completely unserved. And there are some households and even some businesses and residences there that don't have very good broadband. So that's Grant County. Here is Woodward County, which has pretty kind of poor connectivity. Surprisingly, even though Woodward is a relatively big place at about 10,000 people, there's parts of this county that have, again, very low, slow speeds, and you can see where the households are and some businesses out there that are lacking good broadband connectivity. Here is Caddo. Again, only about half the county has official broadband availability. Anadarko is notably does not meet that 25 megabit per second category. And you can see some other parts of the county that are lacking. And then here's an interesting one. Here's Oklahoma County, which is very urban. And even though most of the county does well, you can see there in the top right corner, there are parts of the county, even though it's very relatively densely populated, that does not have good broadband access. And there's a lot of ag facilities out there that could use some broadband potentially for them. So this is the kind of map that we can make for you guys, for your counties, and maybe have some discussions with your county commissioners. about getting broadband access, improving broadband access in York County. I do want to talk about there, you can gather data on adoption. So again, that's, how many households are actually paying for broadband internet service. And this slide kind of walks you through how to do that. I do have some more detailed slides if you're interested in pulling this data up for yourself, but you can put in your city, your county, your zip code, and get this type of data and compare it to the state averages here. So again, our state average is about 84%, but maybe your city is only sitting at 70%. And so it's interesting to see how you kind of compare in terms of broadband access or broadband subscriptions and what things we might try to help that. Here's some maps we've made about the broadband adoption situation. Some counties have very poor overall subscription rates. You can see where those are across the state. Here is the percentage with mobile only connection. So the only way they connect is with a cell phone, and that's not something we want to see high rates of, but there are some counties with a lot of people that are very dependent on only cell phones for their internet connection. So what I want to kind of wrap up my discussion here is where we're moving forward, or what the path forward. There is a lot of money available through these various stimulus packages that have been passed for COVID-19, and in particular, this American Rescue Plan has direct funds for states, counties, and cities. There's a lot of money out there, $350 billion. You can use that for broadband. We're encouraging county extension educators to talk to their local county officials, and that's your county commissioners essentially, who are going to decide what to do with this money. We've heard some of them are just going to say we don't want it and turn it back over. I would hope that they at least look at the broadband situation, because they're encouraging broadband applications for this. So please get in touch with me if that's something you would like to have a discussion with your county commissioner about. Here's some other money for availability. I also do want to talk about adoption. Hopefully you guys have gotten some emails from me about the Emergency Broadband Benefit Program, which gives a subsidy, $50 to $75 a month subsidy for broadband connections to low-income households. We've had great success in Oklahoma at signing up for this. We're a top 5 state in terms of the percentage that are eligible that have applied for it, and we would like to continue that. It is still ongoing. People still are getting a sizable chunk of money every month to help pay for their broadband connection. We want to try to continue that. In Oklahoma, I am on this Rural Broadband Expansion Council that we're doing work across the state. We did pass legislation last year to put some money in our state budget to incentivize providers to go to rural areas. We are building a state level broadband availability map. That'll be on the way, hopefully early next year. And like I said, we're working to work with the federal funds that are on the way to distribute those to the places that are most in need. A little bit more about the emergency broadband benefit. I do have a fact sheet on this. I know a lot of the libraries in your areas and school districts are pushing this. And one cool thing about Oklahoma is where most of our counties are defined as tribal, which means they get the $75 a month discount based on the way the FCC defines tribal. So you can see who's eligible there. We do think this program is going to be extended and bumps to a higher percentage of people who could qualify for it. And I'll be in touch with certainly some emails if that does happen. And we would encourage you guys to spread the word to people in your county about participating in this. Right now, again, we're in the top 5 in terms of the percentage participation. We have about 37% of our eligible households that are participating. You can see a map of who's doing a good job participating and who's not. And some of that is due to the provider in that area might not be working with this program. Others are very heavily involved. So we're trying to spread the word as much as we can. If you see your area is one of low participation, again, please reach out and maybe there's something we can do to try to spread the word a little bit more. I do want to talk about our Rural Library Hotspot Loan Program. This is something we've started a couple years ago. We have these devices. You can see the hotspot there at the top that runs off the local cellular network. We partner with these small libraries to give them, 5 to 10 devices. They've been hugely successful. People get them for a week. They go to the library and just check it out, just like you would a book. You get it for a week, and you have a broadband connection for a week. And so it's been a great program for us. We've really been proud of what we've been able to accomplish with this. And we are starting a digital navigator program in 5 of them, which will help people do things like sign up for the EBB and figure out how to use telehealth, and even do things like build a small business website. We're trying to help people in these rural areas make the most of their broadband access. Here's some of the comments from these patrons. It's really cool to read through these and just see how useful they are to community members and students at home. They get a hugely positive response, and we're trying to grow this 5 to 10 libraries at a time. So if you didn't see your local library on that list, please reach out to me or reach out to them, see if they're interested in the coming years, and we can hopefully get them on this list. This is definitely something that's growing nationwide, and certainly here in Oklahoma as well. So just to summarize, we do see some mapping updates getting better. I always highlight this 2 components of the digital divide. We do lag in terms of availability in rural areas and also in adoption. This is largely driven by cost. You can see the chart there on the right showing that if you're high income, you're pretty low likelihood of not having internet access. But if you're lower income, you're much more likely to not have internet access. And so there are programs out there like the Emergency Broadband Benefit and digital inclusion efforts trying to address that. And there is a lot of funding on the way through the American Recovery Plan and the pending infrastructure bill that can give funds to local communities, local counties for things like broadband availability, which again is literally building the infrastructure, whether it's through a electric cooperative, a local provider. Even the city can go out and build their own network if that's something you're interested in. And then also enhancing adoption, again, paying for that monthly connection for low income and households that need it. And so that is all I had. I do have a link for you guys here. I don't know if you can click on that, or if I need to sharing my screen, or maybe Brent can share it another way. Let me stop sharing. Probably can put that in the chat. Yes, thank you, Brent, for putting that in the chat. And I know I sped through that, but we've still got, I think we got about 5 minutes or so for questions. I have been in touch with a few county educators who are really doing some really great work on broadband, talking to their county commissioners, spreading the word about the EBB program. And so I'm happy to point you to those people or answer questions myself about some things that we're trying to do in the broadband world. So I'll stop talking for a minute and see if there's any questions you guys have. And again, just would encourage you to reach out. I think it's a hot topic right now and a lot of interest.
And I have allowed people, you can now unmute yourselves to ask a question of Dr. Whitacre, or you may ask through the chat box, like I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation today. And as Dr. Whitacre mentioned, I did share a link to the survey as well in the chat box for you to click if you're not able to click through on the screen.
And Brent, can you clarify, do you typically send these slides out, or do they need to get in touch with us? If
they would need to get in touch. I will send out a link to this video recording, but the slides themselves, I don't send out unless they request them, but then I can. And yes, Misha, the recording will be available. I'll upload it to YouTube and share that through email and on Facebook on our farm management page.
And so I know I went through a couple of those resources pretty quickly, but I'm happy to help walk you guys through how you gather the data local to your city and county about your broadband availability situation and your broadband adoption situation. And like I said, I can make some of those maps for counties. I know a couple of you out there have already reached out to me, asking me to do that and sharing it with your county commissioners. That's great. I would ask you to try to spread the word about the library hotspot program and the EBB program. I've got some documentation on that if it's something you all are interested in sharing. And again, would encourage you to do so.
Dr. Whitacre, the southeast area of the state map showed that there was more mobile only percentages. Is that kind of due to some of the topography, or is there something else?
Brian, it's a good question. I think a lot of that is, of course, the southeast corner of the state is, relatively higher rates of poverty and some kind of lower employment rates down there. So I think a lot of that is the cost of actually paying for a wired subscription. And so I think that's part of I think a lot of people are, if they're going to pay for a broadband bill, it's just going to be one or the other, right? It's going to be, a mobile connection or a desktop. And so a lot of more people are choosing to have that mobile connection. And that's the only thing, frankly, they can afford. So hopefully this EBB program could help with that. If you look at overall availability, it's a little bit worse in the southeast corner, but not dramatically worse. So I don't think, certainly some topography for some counties, it is playing a role. But I think from the adoption side of things, it's more of a cost issue. And that's why this EBB program can help. That makes sense, Brian?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Well, if there are no other questions, or if you have questions, now's the time. Speak up or speak now or forever hold your peace. While we have Dr. Whitacre on the line with us.
I'll just say I like making maps. So because if you want some for your county or again, want these to see how your county compares to its neighbors, happy to share these. And sometimes it raises some interesting questions like Brian said, and you can kind of see how your area compares and see if there's something you might be able to do to better the situation there.
So thank you, Dr. Whitacre, for presenting today. I appreciate that. And thank you everyone for joining us today. Our next webinar will be on November 9th, and Dr. Rodney Holcomb will discuss small meat processing in Oklahoma. So we hope you will be able to join us then. So until then, goodbye.